I'm Kelly Wright along the U.S.-Mexico border in Del Rio, Texas. Coming up tonight on America's Hope, we'll be focusing on the crisis at the border. That's next. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. I'm coming to you tonight from Del Rio, Texas, a border town along the U.S.-Mexico border. In fact, just over my shoulder, beyond that fencing there and that clump of trees, you can see buildings. Those buildings are in Mexico. Now, many people come to this country, to be fair, legally, but there's a crisis here along the border, and it's one of illegal immigration. In fact, last year alone, according to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, some 10 million people crossed into America along the southern border illegally. Now that's a problem because we don't know what their purpose and their reason is for coming here. To be fair, some have come here to get freedom from the tyranny and the violence they face in their home countries. But there are others who are coming here with nefarious and sinister purposes. And that's a problem, and that has created the crisis here at the border. We're going to talk about that tonight as we focus on the border crisis on America's Hope. Let's get started. Reggie, can you tell me where we are right now?
Right now, this is the road that goes along the border. The border will be over to your left. It's the very edge, so it's kind of an exclusion zone that the government kind of purchased off private landowners to have kind of a buffer between the town and the border itself, the river. The river is about a quarter mile there to your left.
Over here, this wall right here, is this known as the Trump wall?
That's both the Trump and the Abbott wall. And the way that it was designed, of course, is to go ahead and minimize the likelihood of someone scaling it. You have the slicker steel part on the top, and you have the areas in between that don't have any crossbars that makes it harder to scale.
And then this lower wall what is that compared to the Trump wall?
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's more of a visual deterrent. It's a lot easier to scale. A lot of this went up during the time when Obama was president. And a lot of it was just to provide an additional physical barrier. You have the lines in and out of that fence that allow the Border Patrol to patrol and drive along and just keep the surveillance of it.
The governor of this state, as well as 14 other Republican governors, are quite upset that we've seen an influx of 10 million illegal immigrants coming across our border. You grew up here in Del Rio. You have viewed this as being kind of like the epicenter of the southern border crisis. Why?
Well, the odd part is, everybody's lending attention to the border now. For us, it's been an ongoing thing. We've always grown up with Border Patrol, with the enforcement. The difference now is whereas you had the majority of the illegal immigration before happening, Mexican nationals coming over, now you have everybody but the Mexican nationals. A lot of the misunderstood part of it is a lot of the Mexican nationals don't qualify for the amnesty, so really you have everybody but the Mexicans coming over. A lot of the Mexican nationals are immediately deported. So you have an influx of people other than Mexicans. So it's not. It really has been just a boom here, and just an overwhelming condition that we've been put in, compared to how it was before. Before, you used to view the Border Patrol and the Customs and Border Protection, which didn't exist before 9/11. It was the Border Patrol and INS. But now you have them almost serving as facilitators for the immigration versus the deterrent. It's a joke, people used to run away from the Border Patrol, whereas now pretty much they wave them down to serve as a ride, because that's the way they're going to get to the processing stations, and that's essentially their ticket inwards.
Now, Reggie, what am I seeing here? Because I see a bridge over there.
Now, what you're seeing here, you're seeing the international bridge. You have some backed up traffic, and the area underneath the bridge Back when we had the Haitian emergency, is the area where all of those folks were being staged. So we had up to about 30,000 people at a time. You have some tents that are still in place there that the emergency services and Texas Guard set up to help alleviate some of the strain that was being brought upon the local emergency services and the
If we can we get out
hospital.
and you can show me about this? Because this is something that you experienced firsthand, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll do that. So what was happening here when 30,000 Haitian immigrants were trying to enter here illegally? It became a humanitarian crisis, which many of us remember. You had to help some of the people in dire situations, including helping a baby. What happened?
Yes. Well, we had the medical emergency. You have people, of course, from a poor country, and of course they're in transit, so they're not likely to have the best nutrition and the best health care. So any medical issues that they may have are exacerbated by the trip, and just plain the distance of it, exposure to bad water and such. But you also have people that are pregnant that have the chronic illnesses. And I actually delivered a baby right underneath the bridge.
You're kidding me.
Yes, sir. And it was a...
Wait, right under that bridge?
Yes, sir. Right in the bridge. They called us for a woman in labor. We showed up. The Border Patrol was there. The Border Patrol was very helpful with a lot of their teams being medically trained. They brought us up there, and initially it's to go ahead and try to stabilize the person and move them. However, once a woman is in active labor, it's very dangerous. So you have to go ahead and try to do what you can to deliver the baby safely, stabilize the baby, take care of the baby, the mother, and then move afterward. And we had at least 20,000 people around us, and everybody kind of forming a wall, and us knowing that on one hand that we weren't safe, but two, that we were there to do a job. And we don't, we don't discern and we don't discriminate as to who we help. At that point, it's the matter of having a healthy child, healthy mom afterwards. There's lots of pictures on the side of the border, on the Mexico side, where you have just these piles of bracelets, like you would find at a hospital.
That the kids wear?
That have barcodes.
Yeah.
So they have they have sophisticated systems.
So that's what I understand, that the cartels are actually making bracelets and they're color coded, which means you pay more money for that particular transaction, if you will.
Depending on where you're from, depending on how much care is given to you. If someone's made a deal to protect you, you pay more. So you're that, and then you have the barcode to keep track of everybody. So I mean, whatever resources and whatever infrastructure you would think of the most efficient company, they have it, because it's a cutthroat business, literally.
So these cartels, and they found a way to make money off of human souls.
Yes. Well, it's at that point, at a certain point, humans become the product.
The humans are the product.
Correct.
Children, women, men. And if they become the product and smuggling people as well as drugs is their fortune, then this is a money issue.
Yes, whatever pays the most, somebody will make money on both sides. The infrastructure is there.
On both sides?
Correct, on both sides.
Meaning that someone in America is making money illegally.
The numbers and the infrastructure are such that it is that you would have to be naive not to accept that somebody on this side is making money on top of it. It's not.
So
just
we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that's illegal.
Yes, and the draw of that money is too much.
And the only way to stop that then would be an interdiction from the United States military, National Guard, all of our law enforcement.
To stop it, as well as the civilian authorities, the government authorities within, to track all of this.
Yeah.
It's such a lucrative opportunity. And honestly, if they don't intervene, someone else will take care of it. You have Chinese nationals. We had people from Tibet, people from Nepal. I'd never met anybody Nepalese, and all of a sudden you have people from Nepal showing up. And they came through the Mexico border here.
So why would people from China be coming across the border into the United States from Mexico?
I mean, and that's something that boggled my mind, because the logical thing would be for them to come in Baja California and go up to California there. But if you're going through Mexico proper or coming in through the Gulf of Mexico, through the Panama Canal somewhere. I mean, it's a huge way to go around what would be a logical entry point. Either they're for the political side, or just because of the ease of transit here. Yeah. It's so well known that this is the point to go through, that people are diverted from all over the world.
But are you concerned, though, that something nefarious could be going on, something sinister could be going on with Chinese nationals crossing in, as well as people from Iran, some people from other nations that are basically our adversaries to the United States?
Correct. And very concerned because we have no way of vetting these people. We're relying on the systems, the screenings. A lot of them, I guess, would be Interpol or anything else. But unless those countries feed into it, there's no database for it. So you're a new person, you're a new fingerprint, you're a new face, and essentially a blank slate. So whatever you did in the past, especially if you're in one of the areas that are our adversary, our political or military adversary, they have no incentive to share that information with us. So you come in blank slate and you go in free as a bird, and you're essentially not being tracked.
So we got a problem.
Yes.
And we've got trouble with a capital T.
Yes.
And it would seem, having come here to the border and hearing people like yourself and the governor and of course some of the other people who live in Eagle Pass, Americans aren't aware of this. I mean, some of them are learning. I mean, big city mayors are now seeing the problem, but we just saw, people attacking police officers on the street of New York City, and actually being allowed to be let go.
Yes.
What does that say to you here living in Del Rio?
Well, I mean, I had that very thing with some of my family members that were in Chicago, that didn't believe what was going on. We would tell them, they're like, oh, that's an exaggeration. That's just what you're watching on the news. That's just hype. Until it started affecting them, and they started seeing it. And it's almost, I mean, you wish you could do an I told you so, but for all that you take some sort of humor and some sort of happiness in them finally seeing it, it doesn't help us any, because we're all going to have to deal with it. I mean, they're within the confines of the United States. They're integrated now with our fabric, and there's obviously right now no one has a plan to get anybody out.
And look, this is demoralizing for those who are coming to this country and trying to do it legally.
Yes.
They have to wait to get asylum. They have to wait to be allowed to become a U.S. citizen through naturalization. That's got to be demoralizing to them.
It is absolutely. I mean, some of the people who did illegal, my parents will be the first ones to say, they remind us time and time again, you have no idea what we went through, the legal side in Mexico, to going to the embassy, to getting medical screenings, to having, financial guarantees to make sure that you're not a burden on the system, all for the chance to come over and provide a better life for us, for their children. And they're quick to say, here these people are just walking across and everything's given to them. And there seems to be no negative side of it. It's they seem, they're like, we're stupid to have done it this way. Right now you're foolish to approach it that way, when it's just this easy, free way, which essentially comes with all these benefits on top of that.
So you were mentioning you grew up not far from here, from this border, about a mile away. Mm-hmm. From the time you grew up as a child to now adulthood, you've worked with Homeland Security, you work as a paramedic, you own an ambulance service. Did you ever expect your town to become overwhelmed by illegal immigration?
No. It was all such an ongoing. It was kind of like the status quo for so long, and just the same situation for so long, that this rapid change just came upon us. And I think what's scary and what's sad is people here, after the initial shock, have just become numb and pretty much just accepting of the situation that we're in.
That's a problem.
It's a very big problem, because they've essentially thrown their hands in the air. They've felt abandoned, and they don't really know what to do. They don't fight back. They don't speak up against it, because they don't really see it as any sort of remedy, particularly from the government, because they see the government as part of what is helping this emergency continue.
So Reggie, based on what you just said, if Americans are throwing their hands up in the air and saying, I give up, does that mean that they're giving up hope?
No, they're not giving up hope. I think what they're doing is they're done trying to find solutions from the government. I think the majority of Americans is, on the border as everywhere else, given all the other stresses that they have, are trying to do what they can with the situation and with the cards that they've been dealt. And right now, because you have kind of a flux between Del Rio, Eagle Pass, and the other areas around the border, when it slows down, they kind of breathe a little sigh of relief. They get a chance to pause and go on with regular life, expecting it at any time to fire up here again. Everything is still set up for that, so they have constant reminders of what happened, and they have constant reminders just 1 hour down the road of what's happening there, and that could very easily come back here. So they're kind of living on edge, but at the same time, they're kind of at a loss as to what to do, who to approach, or who's going to step forward to solve it.
So let me ask you then, what is your hope for America?
My hope for America, and it's a funny thing, one thing that I ran into with particularly the Cuban immigrants was this dream of America that they had, this land of freedom that they have. And what I would hope now in what everybody is seeing as this invasion, is this danger to our country, is that Americans would have a renewed love for the country and would see America for the America that everybody else sees, the America that these illegal aliens and everybody else sees as this draw, because they're blessed to be in this place. And I want for them to, I would like for my fellow countrymen to realize how fortunate they are, and without protecting it, without becoming involved, whichever side of the political realm you want to go with, but without being involved and without being part of the solution in either way, there's not going to be a remedy. There's not going to be anybody else. We are the only people that are going to come up with a solution. It can't be given to somebody else unless we get involved. Any solutions that are given from somewhere else are not going to address the needs that we have.
Yeah. Reggie, thank you. I just need a follow-up question. What did you do when you were contracted with Homeland Security?
I was working at a processing facility south of Eagle Pass. I was with a contractor with them. I think on some realm I'm not really allowed to say.
Okay.
But it was medical screening and it was medical treatment.
All right. All right. The medical treatment for the illegal immigrants coming across
Correct,
here.
as they were coming through.
So that disproves the notion that we do not care about the people coming across.
People would be shocked at the amount of resources that are going on there with the initial process, with the initial screening, with the medical services available there for people that are sick, while they're there, going through the resources here on the border, both from the civilian and the government agencies that are taking care of the people coming in. It's not that their health needs are being ignored. It's just such an overwhelming number of people, and a lot of them that just get lost and sorted through.
But it proves that America does care.
Yes, sir.
Even about people coming across into our country illegally.
It is a long-standing thing, and I'm very proud, and I salute everybody that works on the government side. The CBP, the Border Patrol, have gone to great lengths to train a lot of their people medically to be able to help. In a lot of the rural regions, they actually serve as the first responders, as the first medical responders to a lot of these. Both the people that they catch crossing illegally, but also the civilian side of the U.S. So huge amount of resources, huge dedication that you have for medical professionals, both federal and civilian, that have gone forth for everybody, the Americans and the people coming in, regardless of what their nationality or legal status is.
Reggie, thank you. Coming up next, we'll talk to the wife of a Border Patrol agent and a mother of 3. What is she encountering along the U.S.-Mexico border? And welcome back to America's Hope. In my travels along the U.S.-Mexico border in Del Rio, Texas, I talked to Alison Anderson, a mother of 3 daughters and a wife of a Border Patrol agent. She talked to me about what she encounters on nearly a daily basis with illegal immigrants.
Smugglers looking in my windows at night, homesteads burned down out there. Like, it's just, people have no idea. And then I was the one that always got called racist. Like, you're so racist and you have no empathy. Like, how dare you be that way? They're just coming here for that better life. And how would you like to live in a gang-torn area? And it was like, I'm from Chicago. Like, my family's from the south side of Chicago. What are you talking about? We had to not get mugged on the L train all the time. Like, we're good. And I understand all of that. But this is a different dynamic. And what we went through on the ranch is an entirely different dynamic than what is here in Del Rio.
So Alison,
But I've never once encountered a family unit in 10 years. It's all Godways.
it's all gotaways.
All 100% Godways.
Yeah.
The only child that was on the ranch that I saw hit a camera just before a massive thunderstorm came, and she was being dragged. She was maybe 3.5, and was being dragged.
Dragged by who?
A male in camouflage, an illegal.
A 3-year-old girl was
With a
being dragged over your property.
She hit a law enforcement camera, and I got a copy of that picture, and I was in tears. I was sick to my stomach, and everyone out there worked because of how far south that camera was. They knew that they had the ability to work ahead to try to cut sign to get him, because he had that little girl, and that storm came and washed out all of the foot sign, and they were able to load out on the highway, and she was gone. And it haunts me. That picture haunts me. It had just rained, and they had a break between the storms, and she was soaking wet in a t-shirt and sagging jeans because they were wet, with a huge diaper, and he was completely dressed for the weather, head to toe camo, big, winter clothes, something you'd see a hunter wearing in late fall, just warm, rugged gear, and this little girl was just in bare minerals, just being dragged. And I mean, like, arm out, big strides where, she couldn't keep up with what was going on I have little kids, like, there's a difference between taking their hand and walking with them and, like, come on. And that picture haunts me. It haunts me.
That's a haunting, it haunts me because I'm realizing now that it doesn't matter how old the children are, they're smuggling children in.
I call them mom and pop smuggling operations too, because they're all over the place. Everybody at this point is aware of what isn't going to happen based under the Biden administration. At our house here, we deal with lots of smuggling. I've confronted smugglers, very vocally, so that you understand. There's the river, there's Mexico, the river, a huge ranch, and then a tiny little spit of a road that separates that ranch from our property. And then from our property, there is a 2-track and a draw that goes all the way up to the highway, Highway 90. And they cross that river, go through that ranch, they'll hop that fence, and they've destroyed our whole back fence. We have no perimeter fence anymore because it's too costly and it's redundant. Like, we're just gonna put it up so they can knock it down. We stopped. So we have so many other security parameters put in place because there's essentially almost no point. They're gonna come over the fence. So my husband says they're gonna cut it. If you electrify it, they're gonna cut it, they'll ground it. If you put a bigger fence, they're gonna climb over it. The fence isn't gonna stop them. If they wanna get through, they're gonna get through.
How long have you been living in this area, dealing with this kind of invasion on your own sovereignty?
We have been living here on the border for almost 10 years.
What have you encountered in these 10 years?
That's a very loaded question because at this point, it's more about what we haven't encountered. We have encountered everything from DPS pursuits that have ended on our property. We've encountered homesteads being burned down, entire homesteads being burned down on the ranch. We've encountered smugglers,
homesteads being burned down by
illegals.
Wow.
Illegals. Even though there was a working fireplace in the homestead, they gathered all the furniture and books and stuff that they could find and made a pile in the living room and set it on fire and destroyed the house. We have encountered a countless number of groups of illegals. I mean, thousands of illegals went through that ranch, and we have had illegals that have tried to surround our house. I've been chased from the brush by an illegal back to my own home. I have had 2 different situations happen where illegals have tried to break into our home. one with my mother being home alone and watching our oldest daughter at the time, and then one where I was home alone with our daughter that was just an infant at the time. And I am, that person that has had to pull a firearm on someone to prevent them from coming into my home. And I have had other situations where they've been knocking on our daughter's windows at night. I've had dopers on the property. We've had other illegals that typically tend to just linger for no specific reason on the property. And in those situations, we've had to question, the intentions that they had before they were kind of discovered that they were on the property. But, it's not just what we deal with at home. My husband's also a Border Patrol agent, and he's on the horse patrol here in Del Rio sector. And I mean, he's dealt with having to do chest compressions on, an 18-month-old little girl that was just pulled out of the river, and she was unable to be revived. And it was later learned that she had been brutalized and essentially torn in half in the worst way possible. And they believe that she was used as payment for the suspected mother to cross the river. And it's just unfortunate that things like that happen, and this administration in particular just doesn't care. But my husband's also responded to active shooter situations, like in Kinney County on Christmas Eve last year, where the calls came out that shots had been fired at a DPS trooper after a smuggling pursuit. And he was one of the first on scene and was working with the DPS canine in the brush, actively working, the active shooter. And I mean, he recently came up on a group in the brush, and one of them was armed with a rifle that they had stolen from one of the private properties, one of the other ranches that were out there. And it's constant. I mean, there's so many things. We've had neighbors that have had illegals die in their houses. It's a lot. Too much, honestly.
How do you deal with this, you and your husband, with 3 daughters?
It's hard. I think I get asked that a lot, honestly, and we don't have much choice. We just deal with it because it's what is going on. It's our home. It's our property. This is just an unfortunate situation all around, and we try to handle it the best that we know how as a family. And at the end of the day, regardless of what my husband goes through, he still gets to come home to his family. And regardless of what happens on our property and dealing with illegals, we still have our family. And keeping our kids safe and ensuring that they're going to have, a safe future is what keeps us going and keeps us fighting for them. They are what keeps us going. You had mentioned to me earlier before our interview that at one point your home was surrounded by people who were talking in Spanish and basically determining that you were home alone. It's one of the most terrifying encounters that I've had to date, because there were 4 male illegals that showed up, and I mean, they had ball caps on and hoods up and backpacks, all in dark clothing, and they were just on the other side of a rock wall. And I couldn't see all of them. I didn't know how many were sitting down, but I stepped out my front door to go feed the horses, and they stood up and started yelling. And at first I didn't understand what they were saying, and I went inside. They were all yelling at once, and we actually had a Border Patrol sensor in our house because of how much traffic came through and how many groups showed up at our house. I could hit this sensor and alert Border Patrol because of how remotely we lived. And I went in and hit that sensor immediately, and then stepped back out on the porch, grabbed my firearm, of course, made sure my kids were safe, and they were making demands. And they became aggressive. They were making demands. They wanted specific things so that they could continue on their journey to the highway. Demanding what? They wanted food, they wanted water, and I told them no. And once I told them no, they became aggressive, and 2 of them were speaking in Spanish, very angry tones. Only one out of the 4 was speaking English and communicating with me. And that's when 2 of them said that they were gonna, the one that was speaking English started asking where my husband was. And I didn't say anything, I didn't respond, and they had kind of figured out that my husband wasn't home, and he wasn't, he was at work. And that's when 2 of them stood up and started talking about going back down towards the creek and around to the other side of our house. And it was a very panicking moment for me, because I realized that they knew that I was home by myself, and I lived over an hour away from any 911 responding time. You know, we were tucked down a 22-mile dirt road in a canyon, and I realized that I had to stand up and defend my kids and my house by myself until Border Patrol or anyone that was out on that ranch patrolling could arrive. And ironically enough, when that 911 call went out, my husband was the first person to respond to the house and was able to take all 4 of them into custody. And it turned out later that more than one of them had prior felony charges for residential theft, robbery, and other charges. So the threat was real, and it remains real every single time somebody shows up at our house.
So your own husband became your 911 call?
He was.
To responder, your first responder?
He wasn't. That was not the first time or the last time. I mean, many times he was the first agent that would show up at our house, and he would get those calls over the radio. And I try to explain to people, like, that say, oh no, we understand what you're going through. But do you understand?
Yeah, do they understand?
Do you know what it's like to receive a 911 call, an emergency call coming from your home, from your wife who's in panic, and you have no cell service? From the time you leave that highway to get to our house, there's no cell service for an hour. And you have no idea what is happening in that amount of time from when that call hits you to when you show up to that house. You don't know what circumstances you're gonna roll up on. You don't know the condition of your family. And I've had that happen to me too, when an illegal tried to break into the house when my mom was watching our daughter. And I had a doctor's appointment that I was at in Alpine, Texas. And you know, she called me frantic, and I was driving home, and the last words, she told me that there was a man trying to break in the front door, and she didn't know what to do, but she had the gun, and she was crying and saying that, you know, don't worry, like, I'm going to protect, you know, my daughter, and at all costs. And I lost service kicked out. And I was in a complete panic, because I knew exactly how long it was going to take me to get home before I knew if my mom was okay, if my daughter was okay. Had that man been able to break in? Did she shoot somebody? Was law enforcement able to get there? It's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking.
And it's nerve-wracking every day. How does that affect your psyche, your mental state? Because obviously you, along with so many neighbors, and your neighbors are far away, they're not right next door, but for the people living in these kinds of situations, what's the mental duress that you undergo?
I'm not sure there's a term for it. Some of my doctors have referred to it as PTSD. It creates high anxiety levels, paranoia on some levels, because you're constantly worried outside. You know, when the dogs bark, you jump. You don't know if someone's coming up from behind you. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is it's changed my perspective on how I look at things. I look at the ground for shoe sign now in the dirt. I've had to remember exactly how I lock gates so that I know whether or not someone has come through that gate since the time that I've left, whether or not it's the combination numbers on a lock, exactly what loop of a chain that you latch that gate to every single time you leave, and you look for footprints on either side of your gate, around your house, around the pens, to make sure that you're safe and you're not walking into literally an ambush. Because I've had those situations happen where I go outside to feed the animals and an illegal pops up out of the brush and has chased me back to the house. And those are things that last in my memory, and they linger and change how I respond to things on a daily basis. So mentally, it's exhausting.
The threat is constant, the threat is real, and yet your husband faces a threat as a Border Patrol agent every day as well.
Yes, sir.
You take exception to the fact that people have criticized you, criticized your husband for telling the world what is happening here in Del Rio, Texas. What do you want people to know about your husband's role as a Border Patrol agent and the Border Patrol?
Our Border Patrol agents work tirelessly and selflessly every single day. I know my husband. I know what he does. I've seen him work in the field. I've seen him catch groups. I've seen him catch people wanted for manslaughter that were on our property, trying to enter the United States illegally to avoid court hearings. They fled and came back and got caught by him. He has worked so many groups and caught so many violent and bad people that should not be in this country. And to this day, he's on the horse patrol here in Del Rio sector, and he's in the brush, and he's catching convicted rapists. He's catching individuals that are armed with stolen rifles in the brush here in this sector. He is working. He's also EMT. He is at almost every, pursuit, smuggling pursuit that ends in a wreck. He's there providing aid. He's had illegals die on his backboard. He's provided aid to children that are here in the worst circumstances. And I don't think that what this administration is doing to our Border Patrol agents is fair by any means. They are heroes.
Has it come to that, Alison? Do you feel that we've lost our sovereignty here along the U.S.-Mexico border?
I feel like we are one disaster away from America waking up.
You mentioned your children. What's the problem with the schools here? What did they encounter as a result of this illegal immigration issue?
I know in Del Rio sector, covers Kinney County, our children used to go to Comstock, and we pulled them, and I homeschool our kids now. And I'm very thankful that we do that, because there were so many high-speed pursuits on our highways. And Highway 90 is what takes you from Del Rio to Comstock, and what takes you from Del Rio to Bracketville in Kinney County. And there have been so many pursuits that have ended in Kinney County right in front of the school. I remember, I think it was last year, that a group bailed out and they were trying to get in the school. And I've actually had to call Comstock last year because a pursuit was happening headed west after the school let out and the kids were on the buses heading east. And I mean, I understand that these individuals that are in these smuggling pursuits are driving recklessly in either lane of the highway. And I was mortified to think that there's 3 school buses carrying all these little kids from kindergarten to, 12th grade headed in the same direction as someone that has absolutely no regard for life. And I've had to call the school and alert the administration that there was a pursuit, who they contacted the school bus drivers, and everyone was aware of it. And I'm just so tired of having to worry about things like this. I shouldn't have to worry about all of these smuggling pursuits. They're endless. They are endless in this sector, and my kids are worth more than allowing it to continue and having to worry about it every single day.
And what do you say of the governor of the Lone Star State, Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, and his efforts through Operation Lone Star?
I appreciate the governor's efforts. I have had the privilege of addressing the governor I've had the privilege of addressing the governor personally before when he came to Del Rio, and I don't know where we would be if we did not have the amount of DPS troopers that he has sent here to keep our highways safe and to help secure our communities and to help Border Patrol agents with what is going on. But what I mean by that is the sheer magnitude, the increase, the surges of the amount of illegals that have been coming through here. Because even though there are huge family units that are giving themselves up to Border Patrol in specific locations. We see that increase in the number of gotaways and smuggling in areas where I live, for instance. So we depend heavily on DPS, especially with the highway pursuits that happen around here. So I appreciate the governor's efforts very much in what he's doing.
Yeah, I find that interesting. You're seeing gotaways. You're not seeing families, but you're seeing single men coming across illegally and posing these threats to you personally, as well as to your children. Your husband's been in the Border Patrol. Why do you continue to do this, I guess, is what many people might be saying.
We've been on this border for close to 10 years, and in that span, we've never encountered a single family unit. On our property, it has always been groups of what they consider to be gotaways, whether or not they've been caught on the property or if I've watched them with my own eyes turn on Highway 90 and disappear. They are all gotaways. And yeah, not a single family unit. But why do we continue to do this? I mean, we're Americans. We're not going to let these groups, these individuals scare us out of our home. And my husband, he's my hero, and he's dedicated to the mission. And hopefully, under a different administration, we'll see that mission return, where our Border Patrol can once again get back to doing the job that we need them to do to secure our border.
So what's your hope for America?
My hope for America would be to have a better future lined up for our kids that, like mine, where I don't have to worry about these massive groups of illegals and violent criminals that are coming through private properties, little properties, and my concern right now is I don't know what is to come as far as crime and violence with the amount of illegals that have been allowed to enter this country. And at this point, I'm not sure what kind of Texas we're going to have left to leave to our kids. It's very scary. My hope is that we can stand and fight and get back what we've lost.
Alison, thank you.
Thank you.
My prayers are with you and your family. I'd like to thank all of our guests who appeared on tonight's program. And as you can see, there's a lot of fencing here, but people are still finding ways to get into our country illegally. And the bottom line, based on my final word, is this. Many of the people here in Texas along the border feel that the federal government has abandoned them. And they want to send a clear message to the Biden administration, to Congress, and to the people of America, is to wake up and listen to them sounding the alarm that there is a problem here, there is a crisis here on the border that may not stay here but affect all of us throughout our country. Think about the fact of fentanyl. Think about human trafficking, child exploitation. All of those things, many of the contributing factors are coming right through the U.S. southern border along Mexico. So the bottom line in America is that we all have a responsibility and to be accountable to the people living here along the border, as well as in our major cities where problems are going on. We must do something about controlling our border and the influx of illegal immigrants. We'll continue to focus on this crisis right here on America's Hope. I'd like to thank you for watching us. Until next time, America, good night. God bless.